Hello, everyone, and welcome to Brave Storytime. My name is Lisa Karasek, and I am the moderator for Brave Healer Productions Storytime. And joining me today is author Mary Jo Ross. Mary Jo, thank you, and welcome to Brave Storytime.
Oh,
So
you're welcome, Lisa.
you're going to be reading your chapter for us today from the book Stop the Silence, Thriving After Child Sexual Abuse. Yes. Such an important book. Oh my God, the message is so important. I want you to tell us a little bit, real quick, about how you came to be in this book.
Okay. I went through a lot of trauma as a child. I've done a lot of healing, and I was able to tell my whole story, probably 2.5 years ago. And I'd been a small business executive consultant for years, been a small business owner since 2007. But once I spoke on that stage and the audience paid attention the whole time, I realized I had a calling. And so it took a while for me to process, like, really, God, I'm really supposed to do this, from stuff that I've known to really stepping out and being vulnerable. Because I didn't let people know and I had to keep them at a distance because I was afraid because I had so much shame because of it. And that's part of when you grow up in a sexually abused environment and other things like I did. Um, all the blame goes to the victim or the survivor. And so that's internalized and you just keep that message. But God took that away from me 2 weeks before I spoke at that summit. And so it's like, okay, kind of processed for a while. It brought more stuff up, so I had to deal with it. And then somebody in my mastermind group is a life coach and does other things. And she has a podcast, name's Marianne Drew, and called My Story. And so she asked if she could interview me. And the first time I'd ever done anything, or I'm sure it's very shaky and nervous, but ended up being 90 minutes. And I decided, okay, I'm going to get brave. So I posted it on LinkedIn and Facebook. A couple days later, I got a call from Pam Pine asking me to write a chapter. She said, we need to hear your story. And that's what happened.
Wow, you are very brave. Thank you for that. Thank you for, I mean, it's hard to say, but thank you for going through what you went through to get you to where you are. Thank you for your message. Pam is absolutely fabulous. Her work is amazing.
Yes.
It is such an honor to know this book, and you get to be in this book. So, wow, kudos to you. Congratulations. Such an important book. I think we, the listeners, might know now the answer to this question because you've kind of given a little bit of a background, but why did you want to write your chapter?
I just saw it as God opening doors. And so it's like I said I'd do it. So then I had to do it. And it was a short timeline. Um, and so I really had to focus and it was only a certain number of words and that kind of stuff. Um, but it was like people need to know that they can go through extreme trauma and yet come out on the other side like I have. I'm a thriver now, not a victim, not a survivor. I'm a thriver, have a great life. And so it's important for people to know that it is possible. So don't give up on your friend or, someone else who is a survivor just because you think there's no hope, because there is.
Beautiful. And so, in the first question, you spoke a little bit to the shame
Mhm.
that you carried with you for so many years, I'm sure. And then you landed on this podcast. And then you were
Mhm.
asked to write the chapter.
Mhm.
So, how did it feel writing it? You said you were nervous for the podcast, but writing is a whole nother story.
It is. And Laura is a great author. I mean, a great publisher and so encouraging. And then the other people in the book who are also authors in the book, it was a supportive environment. But it was different putting it down on paper. And I only had to limit it to things. I don't think anybody would want to read a book of my whole story. I don't want to go there. So this was enough to share some, but not too much. And I had to condense things and shorten things, do just pick certain things. Um, but I think it's a good overall picture of what I went through. And I love it because not only did each of us authors share part of our stories, we also gave tips on what helped us heal. And
That's
so I'll be sharing some of my tips for helping being around survivors and do's and don'ts.
beautiful. And that's the gift. Yes, truly the gift for the reader. Um, so grab your tissues. Listeners, grab your tissues. I know that with the other authors who've read from this book so far, I know I need to grab from mine. So you might want to grab your tissues, go grab them now before Mary Jo starts reading. How are you feeling, Mary Jo? You ready?
I have my tissues.
Yeah, so I know you've practiced and you've got it down, but it's different. You're gonna read with intention this time. So are you feeling ready?
Yes, I am.
I'm going to turn it over to you. Go ahead and let's hear your story. I apologize. So let me tell you what Mary Jo's. So hers is chapter 8 in the book, and her title is "It Happened. We Believe You." Thank you, Mary Jo.
You're welcome. A subtitle to that is Fighting to Tell My Story. I grew up in a generational satanic cult and was sex trafficked by family members in exchange for personal favors, groceries, drugs, and cash. My dad played the director of Teach Your Five Kids All the Ways to Have Sex. Thankfully, there are no videos or pictures. The story of my 17 years in hell would fill a book. The abuse started at my birth and ended at the beginning of my senior year of high school after I got kicked out over curfew issues. I'll never forget being 5 years old and chanting, I'm special, and dancing around. I got a new dress. I get to go stay with my grandparents. Granddaddy was taking me somewhere special to meet his friends. That sunny, hot Saturday, I rode with him on the slippery front seat of his great big Cadillac to a place with a big parking lot. As we approached the building, I noticed there were no windows and a ruler and a compass on the outside. Granddaddy held my hand and reminded me to make him proud. Before I could ask anything, we were inside the building where nobody had their inside voices on. I entertained myself with a notepad, a pen, and a pencil during the meeting. It felt like hours had passed when everybody got up and started moving around. While everyone took their chairs to the big room, I ran up to Granddaddy. Is it time to go now? He said, no. He took my hand and dragged me through the big circle of chairs filled with men. He took me to the grand poobah and in a mean voice said, you will do what you are told. Make me proud. Those men passed me around. I couldn't deal with it, so I went to a special place in my mind. I remember coming to and crying partway through the circle. Please, can we go now? No one answered. I just got past to the next man. My new dress was ruined. I hurt everywhere. I learned later that Granddaddy got to move up in the organization's hierarchy. About 40% of children who are sex trafficked are trafficked by family or someone close to them, including kids in your community. Head and sand reactions are common. If you acknowledge something's going on, you're responsible for doing something about it. In my family, my grandfather, dad, mother, and older sister pimped me out. With 5 growing kids in the house, there was never enough food. My dad's construction company usually lost money. Because males were more important than females in our house, they got larger portions and seconds. I was always hungry. Some Saturday mornings, my mother took me into town and dropped me off at one of 2 different places, depending on which man's turn it was. The grandfather clock at one house seemed very slow. Before I entered, I visited a field of flowers in my head for the next hour before she came back. And we went to the grocery store to spend the new cash in her pocket. After earning scholarships and going away to college to escape the family abuse, I went on to experience more abuse. I escaped with a broken relationship picker. I chose relationships replicating my childhood trauma. At 23, as a new mom in a miserable marriage and severely depressed, I started having dreams that my dad was getting into bed with me instead of my husband. Curled up in a ball, pictures and feelings flooded in. I could barely function. I couldn't spend one more night crying and calling hospitals when my husband didn't come home. I can't live like this anymore. I need help. I don't want to remember or tell anyone, but I don't have a choice. I can't let my son be exposed to my family or what happened to me. My husband's health insurance policy would cover mental health help, but I had to get a referral. After several nights of not wanting to fall asleep and dream, I got the nerve to call my doctor's office to schedule an appointment. I need to get a referral for a therapist, I told the receptionist. Who's your doctor? She asked. Okay, just a minute. His nurse came on the phone. Who is this? What do you want? I need to get a referral. I need help because I was sexually abused. Really? Are you sure? She said. She thinks I'm dirty. I'm not a bad person. Why the hell would I make something like that up? The referral appointment finally got scheduled for 3 weeks later. Normally, I could get an appointment within a day or 2 of calling. My doctor knocked on the door before entering his office, where I sat. He put a file down on the table near the door, turned away, and walked with his back to me toward the window. What are you here for? He asked. I need a referral. I was sexually abused and I need help. Tell me what happened, he said. I can't remember. You can't? He asked. I need to know what happened. Why does he need to know the details? He's not a fucking therapist. I can't remember, but I know what happened. Well, if you can't tell me what happened, he said, you're just making this up for attention. You don't need a referral. I'm not making it up. I need help. He finally turned and looked at me. I didn't get out of my chair. Then he said, I don't believe you. He finally agreed to refer me to a female psychiatrist he knew. 2 weeks later, I sat in front of her desk. Why are you here? She asked. I was sexually abused and need help. Tell me what happened, she said. I can't remember. I just know it did. When she said, well, if you can't tell me, it didn't happen, I saw red. Not again. Why the hell would I make something like that up? I know it happened. I just can't remember. She sounds just like my doctor. I hate him. Less than 10 minutes after I arrived, the psychiatrist ushered me out of her office. You're wasting my time. I started bawling as I left the office. I pulled over several times during the 23-mile drive home because I was crying so hard. I decided to face the embarrassment of going to the community mental health center in our small town where everyone could see who was coming and going. My puffy eyes, red face, and tears got a quick response. A therapist took me into a small room. Why are you upset? She asked. After I calmed down, she looked at me. The doctor said it didn't happen. The only option I have is a 12-week group for adult children of alcoholics, ACOA. I started the ACOA group the following week. Meanwhile, things got even more miserable at home. My husband was upset about having to babysit his child while I went to my appointment. He got angry when I started going to Al-Anon. Don't you dare say anything about me. You're the one who's crazy and needs help. He got fired from a large aerospace company when he forgot his ID badge and went to get a temporary badge while reeking of pot smoke. It was the last straw. I filed for divorce just a few days after finding out I was pregnant again. My son and I moved out, couch surfed, and were homeless for 6 weeks. We ended up in an apartment which cost $47 a month. I qualified for Medicaid and food stamps since I was pregnant and in no condition to hold a job. When the 12-week group was almost over, my ACOA social worker, Alan, introduced me to my hero and therapist, Carol. Carol had lots of experience in dealing with child sexual abuse as well as generational satanic ritual abuse. She became my lifesaver. It wasn't an easy job for her. I wasn't an easy client. For me, it was exhausting and debilitating to uncover the memories which came flooding back. Once I began to peel back the scabs covering my childhood memories, the worst part was dealing with the satanic ritual abuse. The generational satanic cult I grew up in but never knew the name of came through both parents. My mother was a high priestess, so her side was more powerful. Severe consequences hung up over our heads to deter any talking. As a result of cult programming that began at age 2 for my siblings and me, I still automatically turned the wrong way. And it was deliberate to destroy credibility in case we tried to show somebody where a ritual occurred. However, Carol believed in me. 2 of my sisters happened to be in therapy in different states at the same time, and we all signed releases so our therapists could talk to each other. The therapist believed us because we told the same stories, just differing by roles and ages. Most satanic ritual abuse survivors never have validation. I'm not crazy after all. My mother, the martyr, laid guilt trips to try to get me to visit her and other family members in a different state. In a forwarded letter, she wrote, I'll be happy to buy you a computer so you can work and keep in better touch. You need to get it in person. It's too expensive to ship. I'm glad we'd moved into an apartment. Our neighbor reported someone who looked like one of my brothers sitting in a car outside our former house for almost a week. I think he planned to kidnap us. For our safety, and with the support of my therapist, social worker, law enforcement friends, and attorney, I severed all ties to my biological family. Not having a family left a gaping hole in my life for years. As a result, I stayed in relationships way past the expiration date, no matter how dysfunctional. Since I divorced the ex-husband my mother feared, my son and I were extremely vulnerable because when you're born into a generational satanic cult, you're not allowed to leave and live. You'll have an accident or commit suicide with or without help. An AA member hosted a daily radio show on one local station. I agreed to be interviewed a couple times on air so it would be investigated if something happened to me. I couldn't disappear if my son was going to survive and be safe. After those interviews aired, a friend introduced me to a lieutenant from the sheriff's office. We sat in her living room for 2 hours before the lieutenant looked me in the eye and said, "I believe you." I cried because it was the first time anyone had ever said that to me. The lieutenant introduced me to a homicide detective from a nearby police department who also believed me. It felt like I had my own bodyguards when I was their surprise guest speaker at a statewide law enforcement conference on generational and other satanic cults. When my youngest was almost 6 months old, I learned I'd be losing my Medicaid benefits. Since Medicaid only paid for 2 hours of therapy per month, and Carol donated 2 hours per month, I drove 45 minutes each way twice a week for 30-minute appointments. I took several medications that couldn't just be stopped suddenly. I wasn't ready to get a job and support the three of us. Damn it, there's got to be a way. I'm not giving up. I researched our state government and got contact information for the governor and all the legislators involved in anything to do with health and mental health. I wrote the governor a letter CCing 17 people, asking, how can you help? Two weeks later, my social worker called. I've been told to drop my other cases until I can get you on Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI. Temporary help. Let me see Carol and take my meds for a couple of months until I was approved. After 3 years of therapy, I graduated and re-entered the workforce. I worked with developmentally delayed adults in a community setting. Later, I drove an hour, 10 minutes each way to work at a partial hospital school, day school, which was a partnership between the Mental Health Center and Special Education Services. As a case manager, I worked with severely emotionally disturbed adolescent males in a classroom with 8 students and 4 staff. I also led a psychosocial group twice a day by myself. My job included taking my clients out in the community and into their homes, as well as to any court hearings or any IEP meetings. I earned Employee of the Month several times and then Employee of the Year. My boss told me, I've never known such a strong advocate for children. In a desperate move, I got back together with my children's father, and we moved to Oklahoma for his job while I volunteered at the boys' school. The relationship finally ended when he raped me with his fist on the morning of a sunny school day. Our door was partially open, and the boys were awake in the other room. His reaction to impotence was violence. I ended up miscarrying not long afterward. I found a new therapist. Two pastors and their wives helped us move into an apartment. I worked 2 jobs to put food on the table because I didn't receive child support. Eventually, I climbed the professional ladder and became executive director of 6 nonprofit state professional associations at the same time, and owner of an association management company. Instead of doing drugs, drinking, starving, binging, cutting, or other things to avoid memories, workaholism was my coping mechanism. It took extreme burnout and lots of effort to improve my coping skills and have a healthier attitude toward work. Now my business, consulting clients, benefit from my hard-won wisdom. The practice. I found when I share my story, it gives permission for others to share theirs. I'm always amazed how many people who have been sexually abused and have never told anyone. Please reach out and tell someone what happened to you. Sharing your story will help you heal. You can write it out if it's too hard to speak the words. If someone doesn't react sensitively to you disclosing, it just means they're not the right person for the moment. It still happened. You lived through it. No one has the right to tell you your reality. It's important to find a compelling reason to tell someone else. I was determined to ensure my children were never exposed to anything I experienced. Fight for yourself. Fight for your kids. Fight to break the cycle. I didn't have friends, so Al-Anon was the first place I found people who would listen to me without being paid. There are lots of free or low-cost support groups. Many times, people in recovery were abused, often sexually. It takes a great deal of courage for a survivor to tell their story. So I created a helpful handout for those who find themselves interacting with survivors. When I wrote this chapter, it was called Tips for Dealing with a Survivor of Child Sexual Abuse, Familial Child Sex Trafficking, or Satanic Ritual Abuse. I've since changed the title and added more to it, so it's much more user-friendly. There's a link to the worksheet in the resource section of this book. Here are some of the tips. Because every person is different, and so is their experience. There is no black and white, or there are no black and white answers to help you support someone in their journey to survive and then thrive. It's important to sit back, breathe, and listen. Tell them, I believe you, and you're brave to share what happened to you. Tell them you're sorry that the abuse happened and want to understand and help them. Remind them it was not their fault. Ask permission before touching them. If possible, stay at their level when speaking with or listening to them, even if you must sit on the floor or stand up. Any sexually based actions or innuendos are inappropriate. Realize you'll probably only hear a small part of the abuse until they trust you. It's okay to empathize or sympathize, but do not say, I know how you feel, even if you think you do. It's a major insult. You may have experienced trauma and or abuse. Please realize your experience doesn't match anyone else. People handle trauma differently. If you're triggered by something you're told, it's okay to leave the room, but tell the survivor why. I'm sick to my stomach, so they don't take it personally. Keep calm. You may be sad or very angry. Some tears are okay, but it can be a trigger if you let yourself get caught up in anger and show it. If you're very emotional, remember you're there for them. Do not expect them to help you deal with your emotions. If you don't have a local resource or don't know how to find one, the Demand Project is based in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but has connections to resources all over the United States. Please go to their website, www.thedemandproject.org, or call them at 539-525-0191. If you want to reach me, my website is www.maryjoross.com. You can also find me on Facebook and LinkedIn under Mary Jo Ross. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Mary Jo. Are you feeling okay?
Huh?
Take a moment. Everyone, take a moment. Very powerful. Thank you. I just feel like I want to take a moment of silence for everyone. Thank you. I usually at this point ask, how did it feel reading your chapter? You don't have to answer if you don't want to. We can go on to the next question, but is there anything that you want to say at this point?
It's different to a live audience than it is reading to myself.
Yeah.
But it helped in how I could try and use different voices and do different things that you can't really necessarily get from on the page. So that felt good.
Good. So you mentioned you have some resources. You said there's a link at the end of your chapter for people to go to your website. I'm going to make sure that I include that in the notes and have everything. Um, is there anything at all that you want to say? Your tips were wonderful. Do you want to expand on them or say anything more? Or is there any last thoughts that you want to say about your story, the chapter, the tips, your work, anything at all? Anything at all at this point? Do you have anything to give the audience? Any last words?
Well, you can reach me through my website, maryjoross.com. Currently, what I've been doing is I've kind of stepped back from most of my consulting business once I was called to do this. So I give presentations, I do podcasts, and I wrote a chapter, doing different things. And so I'm available to do that for other people. I just want people to know that it doesn't matter what you went through, you can have a great life. And I know for law enforcement and social work, I think people get so discouraged and they don't see the possibility. They see a victim or they think a criminal or, whatever. But that is someone who has had zero control over their life because the predators control every second. Maybe not physically, but mind-wise and that kind of thing. And so another tip I would say when you're listening and hearing the story, and you want to do something, Say, give them a couple options. Because if they're like me, they never knew there were options. I didn't till I decided to create one. And so just know that healing takes time. But if it wasn't for other people who've supported me, and if it wasn't for God, I wouldn't be here today.
Hugs to you. Thank you. By far, very brave. Very, very brave and strong. I appreciate you. Thank you. Okay, everyone. So I have included in the notes below the video, I have all of Mary Jo's information, everything that you need to get in contact with her. Please like and subscribe the Brave Healer Productions channel, and please share this video wide. Please reach out to Mary Jo, excuse me, and the other authors in the book, and please get the book. It's a very important book. Awareness is needed. Thank you. I know the mirror image, right? Thank you. Thank you for joining us for Brave Story Time with Mary Jo Ross.
Thank you.